I was born in a rich white slave-owning family. I was one of the lucky ones. I lived in the South growing up. We were farmers except for the fact that we didn't do any other work. It was all the work of the others. I always thought that owning someone wasn't right, but I never told my father how I felt. I just never had the guts to do it. Growing up with these workers around was a little odd. I would often be told to never speak to them. I was always curious as to why not. I would often overhear my father getting mad if there was news of a runaway or sometimes an escape. This opened my eyes to see that my father owned them. I thought it was definitely wrong that you could just buy or trade someone at a slave auction. I didn't think it was fair at all. Sometimes I'd wish that I could just live in the North so I wouldn't really have to worry about any of this. The campaign against slavery succeeded in the North in 1804. Later in 1817, I thought it was interesting to know that the American Colonization Society founded a way to have a place for freed slaves to go. It was in Africa and it was called Liberia. This was a place for freed and escaped slaves to go. I was one of the Southerners who supported this, except my way was more secretive. I didn't want my husband to know about my choices. Even though only a few thousand actually settled there, I thought it was a good idea to let them have that choice. One day I heard the term abolitionist. I later heard someone share that this meant people who wanted to end slavery in the United States. I once glimpsed at this point with my husband, but it didn't end in my favor. I wanted to meet some of these abolitionists to see their side of things, but I didn't know how to do it without my spouse finding out. One day I was walking through town and I had discovered an anti-slavery meeting. A man named Frederick Douglass was speaking. He was an African American and he spoke of his horrid experiences of slavery and how it was sorrowful and he was always suffering. He showed us his history on how he escaped and what it meant to be free. He said he was finally not miserable when he escaped. I got very interested in this subject as time went on. I was reading a paper called The Liberator. William Lloyd Garrison, another abolitionist, wrote this paper. He was the most outspoken and fiery young man as an abolitionist. He definitely connected to my feelings of slavery. In the paper, it mentioned that slavery was an evil to be ended through immediately. He was a man that was set in his ways, and you could tell this to be true through his writing. A year after his paper was launched, he helped to found a New England anti-slavery society. This man was a great example of an abolitionist that he really set an example for me on how I felt, and I should make a difference with the feelings that I felt. Were speakers and abolitionists that were an example to me were the Grimke sisters. They were so important to how I felt because they had the past as I did. Angelina and Sarah were daughters of a wealthy slaveholder in the South. They came to hate slavery as I did, and they moved to work for abolitionists. They lectured everywhere, which is how I met them. It was such a great experience to meet people who were going through the same things I was going through. They also had a hard time getting people to listen to two women testifying, but they defended their rights and they kept with what they believed, which led them to build a crusade for women's rights, which I also supported and believed in. Later in life, I finally made it to my husband what I believed, and I left on my own without a goodbye from him. He didn't believe in what I did, so I just had to get out of there. I started to help out with the Underground Railroad system to help African Americans to escape. The Underground Railroad was a network of abolitionists that secretly helped runaway slaves to reach freedom. I was a conductor who helped those slaves to hide my house, caves, and wagons. I always liked to think of myself as Harriet Tubman, who was the most wanted escaped slave for slave owners. People were offering $40,000 for her capture. We were alike because she would risk her freedom and life to save slaves. She returned to the South 19 times. She helped more than 300 slaves to their freedom, and she saved her own parents from slavery. I like to think that I made a difference in all the people's lives that I had rescued, and being part of the Underground Railroad and being an abolitionist. But being an abolitionist didn't always have good things come with it. My house and I were attacked many times by Southerners and Northerners. But from all my experiences, I am proud to say that I am an abolitionist.